Hello, Americans and other friends and subscribers around the world. Back again, man. So today, this afternoon, now that it's gotten hot, man, I've been out working in the heat. It's supposed to be 102 today, 103 tomorrow, and then 105 or something. It's just insane. So I'm in the office, man. You can see it's cluttery. Man, we are completely, we just hauled a whole van load to the thrift store in town and going to be going through some more stuff. But in between all that, you know, I started talking about my grandpa and the history and all that stuff. Yesterday's video, and just like I said it would, man, it takes over your life. And I ended up spending, I don't know, a couple hours researching yesterday and a couple hours so far today. And then my mom and Miss Kitty and stuff and all of us were kind of going back and forth, and kind of came to the thing is, I'm going to take this time, man. If this stuff interests you, man, this is the history, man. This is back, you know, my grandpa was born in 1869 is when my, which would be my third great grandpa, because I said fifth or something yesterday, because, which is a picture that I'll share here in a little bit. When I was born, where he's holding me was my, that was 6 generations, you know, so that's me, my mom, my grandma, my great-grandma, my great-great-grandma, and then my grandpa. So he was actually my third great grandpa. And anyway, so I'm going to go over him, but man, these articles, and then also in the researching and stuff, I have found out that they have quoted him, and I don't know what, you know, if they were articles and books, whatever, but he's been quoted from his stories from when he grew up as a child in the Shoshone camps, which I'm working on it, man, because I had the one gal, you know, was asking me what tribe, and I'm not 100%, but I'm guessing the Lemhi. You know, the Lemhi Shoshone, which I'll actually read a little bit on that here in a minute too. But we're going to start off with this one article that I found. I thought this is a great way, you know, you never know what's going to happen in this crazy world, man. This is a great way to, you know, this site could go down, or, you know, this stuff could get lost in the mix. I don't have the actual original copies, which I wished I did. But this one, and I'm pretty sure that this must have been where we went and had the 6th generation, because this is the 100th birthday party. We'll honor John Hawes on June 15th in Lava, which is Lava, Idaho, Lava Hot Springs over there, Lava. That's where my grandma is from, my grandma Joe. So anyway, so here we go, man. So let's, I hope this interests you, man, because I find it very interesting. Anyway, I'm doing this so that my grandkids, my grandkids, my kids, everybody can hear it, you know, with my voice reading these articles that, you know, you come across them. It took me a while to find some of these, and I actually found a couple of new ones too. So here we go. John Hawes, native, who will be 100 on June 10th, will be honored at an open house being arranged by his family. The birthday events are scheduled for June 15th at the community building in Lava Hot Springs, near Valley View Rest Home, where the honoree now resides. Friends and relatives are invited to call after 2 p.m. He was born on June 10th, 1869, in the early Idaho settlement of Lemhi near Salmon City. This was 21 years before Idaho became a state, and 11 years after the Bannock and Shoshone Indians attacked the Lemhi settlement and drove off settlers there. His mother was a Shoshone, and his father was a French-Canadian, George Hawes. His father left the boy and possibly another son with the mother. Not long after the mother died, and Joseph Vanessa, another French-Canadian and friend of George Hawes, asked the Indian chief Tindoy, and I've read some stuff. Let's take a stop right here. But Tindoy, I will have to check my facts, but I think Tindoy was actually half white and half Indian, and was the chief of the Lemhi. think. We'll check that. We'll do some fact checking, man. Tendoy. Okay, so sorry about that. George Hawes asked the Indian chief Tendoy, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, if he could have the boy to rear. Vanessa was granted Vanessa, and it would be French, so Vanessa. Nessie was granted the request and took the boy from the Indian camp to his cattle ranch. This begun a second phase of Hawes' life. He remembered his Indian mother and life in the Shoshone camp. Hawes spent the next 10 years of his life on the cattle ranch in Lemhi, and then in the Pissamary, I haven't heard of that. P-A-H-S-I-M-E-O or M-E-R-O-I Valley. His foster father was a bachelor. The two lived in a log cabin that was built with a dirt roof and floor. It measured 16 by 18 feet. Hawes rode the range and grew up with an unusual vigor and mind and body. The words they use crazy. A jovial and companionable temperament which has characterized him throughout his life. Many times while riding herd, he was caught on the range at nightfall. He would use his saddle as a pillow, the hard earth as his bed, and his saddle blanket as his cover. He remembers the mule trains and the mule bridges. He remembers driving herds to Granger, Wyoming, from where this article's kind of messed up too, so it's a photocopy on this site, so it's a little rough, where they were shipped to eastern markets. Freighters from Corrine, Utah, from Salmon, Chalice, Bay Horse, and Bonanza all had to go through what is now Idaho Falls, cross the Taylor's Bridge over the Snake River. It was a toll bridge at Idaho Falls, was known as Eagle Rock. In about 1884, Nessie sold his ranch in the valley and went to San Francisco, leaving his foster son with friends. Later, Vanessa bought a ranch at Swan Lake and sent for the boy. Hawes remembers many things about the Indians, including Sacagawea, the bird woman whose girlhood days spent with her people in the Lemhi Valley. Chabunuki, husband of Sacagawea, was French-Canadian, was like John Hawes' father and foster father. So right there, man, it says that Sacagawea's French-Canadian husband was like a father and foster father to my grandpa. That's pretty cool. At Swan Lake, Hawes met and married Clara Quigley. Their children are Harriet, Preston, and the late John Hawes. Lucy, Reddington, Tom Hawes, and Downey. So they have quite a few kids. After the death of his first wife, Hawes married Christine Georgeston. They lived in Blackfoot, Idaho Falls, and Sterling. After her death, he married Marty, who died in 1961. They resided in Downey, where he continued to reside until the past 2 years. He farmed and did carpentry work. I just love this stuff. So, and I already knew that he outlived 3 wives, and they were married for a good long time. That kind of stuff kind of happens when you live to be 103. All right, I'm gonna go through and get another article. Okay, and then I put a couple of pictures in here. That one that's the 6th generation picture is, that's me as a baby, and then my mom, all the way on up to Grandpa Hawes. So I'm going to finish off this video with this. This is a long article, so it's going to take me a minute, man. If you find this stuff interesting, this is the article that's called "He Remembers Sacagawea." So it's a pretty long article, very interesting, and it's kind of broken up. I've got this part clear. We'll see how the next part turns out, if it's as clear as this. And so here we go. Perhaps no one has a better right to claim Idaho as his native state than does John Hawes of Downey. Some mystery surrounds his birth and early life, but some facts he clearly remembers. He was born on June 10th, 1869, at the early Idaho settlement of Lemhi near Salmon. This was 21 years before statehood for Idaho and 11 years after the abandonment of the Lemhi settlement by a group of Mormon missionaries who were recalled officially to Utah because of an attack by the Bannock and Shoshone Indians. Hawes' mother was a Shoshone Indian and his father a French Canadian by the name of George Hawes, so he was told. His father left the boy and his mother, possibly another brother. He remembers another older brother. The mother died about 5 years after the younger boy was born, and Hawes was left with his mother's people, the Shoshone Indians. Joseph Venice, another French Canadian and friend of George Hawes, asked the Indian chief Tendy if he could have the boy and raise the request, and the request was granted. This kind of, man, it's almost like they, that other article might have been cut out of this one, but still very interesting, man. I'm going to hold on just here a second, because I'm going to have to switch this page, which I'll go to this one. Okay, now this is just a little bit on the Lemhi Shoshone. I need some eyeballs for this. The Lemhi Shoshone are a tribe of northern Shoshone, also called Agakika, or eaters of salmon. The name Lemhi comes from Fort Lemhi, a Mormon mission to this group. They traditionally lived in the Lemhi River Valley and along the Upper Salmon River in Idaho. Bands were very fluid and nomadic, and they often interacted with the intermarried other bands of Shoshone and other tribes such as Bannock. Today, most of them are enrolled in the Shoshone Bannock tribes of Fort Hall Indian Reservation. There's no history there. During the 19th century, Lemhi Shoshone were allied with the Flatheads, and the enemies of the Blackfeet. The Lewis and Clark expedition encountered the Lemhi at Three Forks of Missouri in 1805. In the 1860s, Indian agents estimated the Lemhi population, which included Shoshone, Bannock, and Tukaduka, the sheep eaters. Oh, there it is, man. Tindoy was a prominent Lemhi chief in the mid-19th century. He was half Shoshone. Oh, he wasn't half white. He was half Shoshone and half Bannock. He became the Lemhi's leading chief in 1863. Oh, and then was killed in Bannock. Huh. So we may have just figured out that I may be, like I said, man, we actually you narrow that down. So my third great grandfather was half Shoshone, whichever that goes down. And then I actually did have one of those DNA tests done. If you watch my videos, you've seen that I did that a couple months ago. Dude, it came back. Other than I'm a lot more French because I've got French on both sides. Because I knew that I had Cajun French from down in Louisiana from my father's side, and then I didn't know about the French Canadian so much, but I have when it came out, it was exactly what it was, and all I had was French Canadian, some, you know, a little bit of like Creole and all that, you know, from down south, and then some Native American, which is the Shoshone from here, and then the Canadian and French, man. So I mean, they hit it right on the, you know, so there's no bull crap to those things, so that was pretty cool. All right, let's get back to this. Okay, so the request was granted. We've read that. Nessie took the boy from the Indian camp to his cattle ranch in Lemhi. Thus began the second fate. It came from this. So that last article, actually, they had taken part of that. We're going to go ahead and just read this thing to the end. At the cattle ranches of Nessie, he spent the next 10 years of his life. He recalls riding range among the cattle bareback astride his horse. He was so small, his legs would stick out from the horse's back. That's funny. The Nessie was a got tape running across this that they've tore off. Nessie was a bachelor, and the two lived alone in Lemhi Valley first, and then in Pasomari Valley on the cattle ranches. At the later place, Nessie built a log cabin home that was 16 by 18 feet and had a dirt roof and floor. A few years ago, when Haas made the trip back over the country with his grandson, that's awesome, Glenn, the cabin still stood. Man, that'd be so awesome. You gotta see that. This is probably early 60s, you know, so a long time ago. Haas rode the range and many times was caught at nightfall. He would use a saddle as a pillow and had the earth as his bed and his saddle blanket as his only cover. The cattle were kept on one range during the spring and summer months and were moved to another for the winter months. Hay was never fed because the Pasomari Valley had bottomlands where grass would grow 2 feet high among the willows and shrubs, providing feed and protection for the cattle during the long winter months from October until April. With Nessie, who loved the wild, free life of the frontier, Haas grew up with an unusual vigor and body and mind, a jovial and companionable temperament, which has lasted through his 90 years. So this was when he was 90 when I was born. So this is tenure 1960 or 1958, I guess is when this is. 58 or 59. He remembers the mule trains and the mule bridges. He remembers the bull whackers who drove back at Taylor's Bridge, and the cattlemen had enlisted the help. Whoops, I'm totally. This thing's really, really messed up. The bull whackers who drove the. Sorry. Okay, man, we got it straight. It's the article, like I said, man, it's from an old newspaper article, so the quality of it isn't that good. There's parts where they've taped it together and, you know, then copied it or whatever, and then the whole article's actually on 2 pages, so it's throwing me all over the place. So anyway, so we were at, let me get this back to, okay, so he remembers the bull whackers who drove the, boom, over to the next page, right here, the mules or oxen, and handled their long rawhide whips expertly. Supplies were brought to the camps and settlements by mule teams. Sometimes the cattle buyers would come to the valley to buy cattle. Later, these buyers couldn't handle all of the cattle, so the ranchers decided to cut out the steers and ship them to eastern markets. This made it necessary to drive the herds up to Granger, Wyoming. Freighters from Corrine, Utah, I guess, man, it's completely blurred. Salmon, Chalice, Bayhorse, and Bonanza all had to go through what is now Idaho Falls to use Taylor's Bridge and Toll Bridge spanning the Snake River. Hawes remembers driving a herd of steers to Taylor's Bridge, where they became frightened and stampeded 10 miles upriver. He trailed them and sat astride his horse all night long. The next morning, 2 more riders came to help take the herd into Granger. Back at Taylor's Bridge, the cattlemen had enlisted the help of bullwhackers who lined their freighters up along one side of the bridge and stood armed with their long rawhide whips to help steer the cattle over the bridge. Hawes also recalled that Idaho Falls was not only known as Taylor's Bridge, but was at one time known as Eagle Rock. It was named this because of a cedar. Here we go again. Okay, because of the cedar. Okay, here we go. Sorry, man. If I could show this article, man, it is. I think I actually put it in the video yesterday, a little bit of it or whatever, but man, it is chopped up. I will put a picture of that on right now. All right, so here we go. Also required falls, not only known as Taylor's Bridge, but was at one time known as Eagle Rock. It was named thus because of the cedar tree growing out of the high bed of lava rock, in whose branches an eagle had made its nest. In about 1884, Vanessa sold his ranch in the valley, and taking the boy from his home of sourdough bread and Milligan stew, went to Chalice. Here he left Hawes with friends, Mr. and Mrs. Morrow. Oh, I used to have a Morrow that lived across the street from it. So that he could attend school. At this time, Hawes was 15 years old, and it was the first time at school. Nessie left to spend the winter in San Francisco. In the spring, Hawes went to work for E.R. Hawley, riding range in the valley. In San Francisco, Vanessa had met up with an old acquaintance who owned a ranch south of Swan Lake. Vanessa bought the ranch from his friends and came to southern Idaho. He wrote Hawley asking him to send Hawes down to him. Hawes made the trip on the narrow gauge train. He said he remembers well how he was dressed. He was wearing a long preacher-like coat that had been given him by Mr. and Mrs. Hawley. And he thinks that he must have looked rather peculiar as he got off the train at the Oxford station. He asked the station attendant where the Vanessa Ranch was and was directed to it. It wasn't far, and soon he had walked the distance to be reunited again with his foster father. When Hawes was about 21, Vanessa, who had been a bachelor while rearing the boy, married. Hawes said he was on his own then. Hawes married Clara Quigley, and they had a farm at Swan Lake. They were the parents of 4 children. List the children. Junior. He was converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and took an active part in the Swan Lake Ward. He worked for the cattlemen on the west side and remembers one day while he was there working at the Walkley place, a man came to see him, bringing a younger man whom he said was Hawes' brother. He was so surprised that the visit passed without him finding out some of the things he would like to have known about his own people. The brother's name, wow, man, I just got that, I hadn't read this part, was Yuma Wanagan. His first wife died later, and he married a girl named Christine. They made their home at Sterling, at Blackfoot and Idaho Falls. They spent the winter months in California until her death. While living at Blackfoot in Idaho Falls, he did carpentry work. He married Marty 9 years ago. Following his colorful life, he enjoys reminiscing and has a great desire to know more about his people. Aunt Marty, as she is called, enjoys reminiscing and listens with intense interest to his accounts of his early life and experiences. Hawes has an alert mind and remembers many things regarding his early life in the Shoshone camp. He says he clearly remembers the Indian modes of burial and how they would take the horse belonging to the Indian who had died to the top of the grave and kill it, leaving it there to cover the grave. He claims he remembers Sacagawea, the bird woman whose girlhood days were spent with her tribe in Lemhi Valley. What he said he remembers about her is her dying. He said she suffered greatly before her death in an Indian wickiup. He said he remembers the burial rites held for her. Hawes remembers living in a wickiup. He remembers living in the cowboy camps and at the cabin. He remembers the long Mercer pipes of the cowboys. He remembers the picking up a newspaper and looking at the picture of a man on its pages and asking the cowboys who it was. They told him it was his father, and that the article was an account of his death at Rathdrum. Oh, Rathdrum, Idaho. I'll be trying to find that article. He has been asked if Vanessa could have been his father. He has been asked if Vanessa could have been his father. He answers that he doesn't know. Could George Hawes and Vanessa have been the same man? What of the newspaper article? Aunt Marty listens with interest and shares and enjoys a quiet, peaceful life they live here in their modest home. So I hope you found that, man. I just love that stuff, man. I'm going to clip in a few pictures. If you guys enjoy it, I've got a lot more articles and the history and whatever else I find out, I'll share with you. So leave some comments down there. Like I said, I'm doing this more for my kids and grandkids than anything, and my mom and my grandma. And my grandma hadn't even seen, which I just figured out how to print off some. I found some old, man, like when he got married, his first wife pictures that I actually shared in yesterday's video, and I'm gonna have those printed off and stuff for grandma. She had never even seen him when he was young. So that was the last time I was down there. I actually showed her a picture of him where he's sitting on the porch with the dog, and the two gals. And now I've got the name of those people too, so I'm getting really excited. I'm already ordered them, man. Getting some prints and stuff for my grandma, so I'll go down and spend some time. We'll talk about that. And grandma always has a lot of interesting, things that she remembers about him too. So other than that, man, good Lord willing, and them creeks don't rise. We'll be back again tomorrow. See ya.